Good evening. I'm voice actor Layla Fatima, and welcome to this sleep story. I'll keep the screen dark. You just sit back, relax, and enjoy the story as you drift off to sleep. Somewhere in the depths of the big city, where the unquiet dregs are forever being shaken together, young Murray and the captain had met and become friends. Both were at the lowest ebb possible to their fortunes. Both had fallen from at least an intermediate heaven of respectability and importance, and both were typical products of the monstrous and peculiar social curriculum of their overweening and bumptious civic alma mater. The captain was no longer a captain, one of those sudden moral cataclysms that sometimes sweep the city had hurled him from a high and profitable position in the police department, ripping off his badge and buttons and washing into the hands of his lawyers the solid pieces of real estate that his frugality had enabled him to accumulate. The passing of the flood left him low and dry. 1 month after his disabilitation, a saloon keeper plucked him by the neck from his free lunch counter as a tabby plucks a strange kitten from her nest and cast him asphaltward. This seems low enough, but after that he acquired a pair of cloth-top, button Congress gaiters and wrote complaining letters to the newspapers. And then he fought the attendant at the municipal lodging house who tried to give him a bath. When Murray first saw him, he was holding the hand of an Italian woman who sold apples and garlic on Essex Street and quoting the words of a songbook ballad. Murray's fall had been more Luciferian, if less spectacular. All the pretty, tiny little kickshaws of Gotham had once been his. The megaphone man roars out at you to observe the house of his uncle on a grand and revered avenue. But there had been an awful row about something, and the prince had been escorted to the door by the butler, which, in said avenue, is equivalent to the impact of the avuncular shoe. A weak Prince Hal, without inheritance or sword, he drifted downward to meet his humorless Falstaff and to pick the crusts of the streets with him. One evening, they sat on a bench in a little downtown park. The great bulk of the captain, which starvation seemed to increase, drawing irony instead of pity to his petitions for aid, was heaped against the arm of the bench in a shapeless mess. His red face, spotted by tufts of vermilion, weak old whiskers, and topped by a sagging white straw hat, looked in the gloom like one of those structures that you may observe in a dark Third Avenue window, challenging your imagination to say whether it be something recent in the way of ladies' hats or a strawberry shortcake. A tight-drawn belt, last relic of his official spruceness, made a deep furrow in his circumference. The captain's shoes were buttonless. In a smothered bass he cursed his star of ill luck. Murray, at his side, was shrunk into his dingy and ragged suit of blue serge. His hat was pulled low. He sat quiet and a little indistinct, like some ghost that had been dispossessed. "I'm hungry," growled the captain. "By the top sirloin of the bull of Bashan, I'm starving to death. Right now, I could eat a Bowery restaurant clear through to the stovepipe in the alley. Can't you think of nothing, Murray? You sit there with your shoulders scrunched up, giving an imitation of Reginald Vanderbilt driving his coach. What good are them airs doing you now? Think of some place we can get something to chew." "You forget, my dear captain," said Murray without moving, "that our last attempt at dining was at my suggestion. You bet it was, groaned the captain. You bet your life it was. Have you got any more like that to make? I admit we failed, sighed Murray. I was sure Malone would be good for one more free lunch after the way he talked baseball with me the last time I spent a nickel in his establishment. I had this hand, said the captain, extending the unfortunate member. I had this hand on the drumstick of a turkey and 2 sardine sandwiches when them waiters grabbed us. I was within 2 inches of the olives, said Murray. Stuffed olives. I haven't tasted one in a year. What'll we do? Grumbled the captain. We can't starve. Can't we? Said Murray quietly. I'm glad to hear that. I was afraid we could. You wait here, said the captain, rising heavily and puffily to his feet. I'm going to try to make one more turn. You stay here till I come back, Murray. I won't be over half an hour. If I turn the trick, I'll come back flush. He made some elephantine attempts at smartening his appearance. He gave his fiery mustache a heavenward twist. He dragged into sight a pair of black-edged cuffs, deepened the crease in his middle by tightening his belt another hole, and set off, jaunty as a zoo rhinoceros, across the south end of the park. When he was out of sight, Murray also left the park, hurrying swiftly eastward. He stopped at a building whose steps were flanked by 2 green lights. A police captain named Maroney, he said to the desk sergeant, was dismissed from the force after being tried under charges 3 years ago. I believe sentence was suspended. Is this man wanted now by the police? Why are you asking? Inquired the sergeant with a frown. I thought there might be a reward standing, explained Murray easily. I know the man well. He seems to be keeping himself pretty shady at present. I could lay my hands on him at any time. If there should be a reward. There's no reward, interrupted the sergeant shortly. The man's not wanted, and neither are you, so get out. You are friendly with him, and you would be selling him. Out with you quick, or I'll give you a start. Murray gazed at the officer with serene and virtuous dignity. I would be simply doing my duty as a citizen and gentleman, he said severely. If I could assist the law in laying hold of one of its offenders. Murray hurried back to the bench in the park. He folded his arms and shrank within his clothes to his ghost-like presentment. 10 minutes afterward, the captain arrived at the rendezvous, windy and thunderous as a dog day in Kansas. His collar had been torn away, his straw hat had been twisted and battered, his shirt with oxblood stripes split to the waist, and from head to knee he was drenched with some vile and ignoble greasy fluid that loudly proclaimed to the nose its component leaven of garlic and kitchen stuff. For heaven's sake, Captain, sniffed Murray, I doubt that I would have waited for you if I had suspected you were so desperate as to resort to swill barrels. Cheese it, said the captain harshly. I'm not hogging it yet. It's all on the outside. I went around on Essex and proposed marriage to that Katrina that's got the fruit shop there. Now, that business could be built up. She's a peach as far as a dago could be. I thought I had that signorina mashed sure last week, but look what she done to me. I guess I got too fresh. Well, there's another scheme queered. You don't mean to say, said Murray with infinite contempt, that you would have married that woman to help yourself out of your disgraceful troubles? Me, said the captain. I'd marry the Empress of China for one bowl of chop suey. I'd commit murder for a plate of beef stew. I'd steal a wafer from a waif. I'd be a Mormon for a bowl of chowder. I think, said Murray, resting his head on his hands, that I would play Judas for the price of 1 drink of whiskey. For 30 pieces of silver I would." "Oh, come now," exclaimed the captain in dismay. "You wouldn't do that, Murray. I always thought that Kike's squeal on his boss was about the lowest down play that ever happened. A man that gives his friend away is worse than a pirate." Through the park stepped a large man scanning the benches where the electric light fell. "Is that you, Mac?" he said, halting before the derelicts. His diamond stick pin dazzled, his diamond-studded fob chain assisted. He was big and smooth and well-fed. "Yes, I see it's you," he continued. "They told me at Mike's that I might find you over here. Let me see you in a few minutes, Mac." The captain lifted himself with a grunt of alacrity. If Charlie Finnegan had come down in the bottomless pit to seek him, there must be something doing. Charlie guided him by an arm into a patch of shadow. "You know, Mac," he said, "they're trying Inspector Pickering on graft charges." "He was my inspector," said the captain. "O'Shea wants the job," went on Finnegan. "He must have it. It's for the good of the organization. Pickering must go under. Your testimony will do it. He was your man higher up when you were on the force. His share of the boodle passed through your hands. You must go on the stand and testify against him." "He was," began the captain. "Wait a minute," said Finnegan. A bundle of yellowish stuff came out of his inside pocket. $500 in it for you. $250 on the spot, and the rest. He was my friend, I say," finished the captain. "I'll see you and the gang and the city and the party in the flames of Hades before I'll take the stand against Dan Pickering. I'm down and out, but I'm no traitor to a man that's been my friend." The captain's voice rose and boomed like a split trombone. "Get out of this park, Charlie Finnegan, where us thieves and tramps and boozers are your betters, and take your dirty money with you." Finnegan drifted out by another walk. The captain returned to his seat. "I couldn't avoid hearing," said Murray drearily. "I think you are the biggest fool I ever saw." "What would you have done?" asked the captain. "Nailed Pickering to the cross," said Murray. "Sonny," said the captain, huskily and without heat, "you and me are different. New York is divided into 2 parts, about 42nd Street and below 14th. You come from the other part. We both act according to our lights." An illuminated clock above the trees retailed the information that it lacked the half hour of 12. Both men rose from the bench and moved away together as if seized by the same idea. They left the park, struck through a narrow cross street, and came into Broadway, at this hour as dark, echoing and depeopled as a byway in Pompeii. Northward they turned, and a policeman who glanced at their unkempt and slinking figures withheld the attention a suspicion that he would have granted them at any other hour and place. For on every street in that part of the city, other unkempt and slinking figures were shuffling and hurrying toward a converging point, a point that is marked by no monument save that groove on the pavement worn by tens of thousands of waiting feet. At 9th Street, a tall man wearing an opera hat alighted from a Broadway car and turned his face westward, but he saw Murray, pounced upon him, and dragged him under a streetlight. The captain lumbered slowly to the corner like a wounded bear and waited, growling. "Jerry," cried the hatted one, "how fortunate. I was to begin a search for you tomorrow. The old gentleman has capitulated. You are to be restored to favor. Congratulate you. Come to the office in the morning and get all the money you want. I've liberal instructions in that respect. And the little matrimonial arrangement, said Murray, with his head turned sideways. Why, well, of course, your uncle understands. Expects that the engagement between you and Miss Vanderhurst shall be. Good night, said Murray, moving away. You madman, cried the other, catching his arm. Would you give up 2 millions on account of... Did you ever see her nose, old man? Asked Murray solemnly. But listen to reason, Jerry. Miss Vanderhurst is an heiress, and... Did you ever see it? Yes, I admit that her nose isn't. Good night, said Murray. My friend is waiting for me. I am quoting him when I authorize you to report that there is nothing doing. Good night. A wriggling line of waiting men extended from a door in 10th Street, far up on Broadway, on the outer edge of the pavement. The captain and Murray fell in at the tail of the quivering millipede. 20 feet longer than it was last night, said Murray, looking up at his measuring angle of Grace Church. Half an hour, growled the captain, before we get our punk. The city clocks began to strike 12. The bread line moved forward slowly, its leathern feet sliding on the stones with the sound of a hissing serpent, as they who had lived according to their lights closed up in the rear. All things change except Barbers, the ways of Barbers, and the surroundings of Barbers. These never change. What one experiences in a barber shop the first time he enters one is what he always experiences in barbers' shops afterward, till the end of his days. I got shaved this morning as usual. A man approached the door from Jones Street as I approached it from Main, a thing that always happens. I hurried up, but it was of no use. He entered the door one little step ahead of me, and I followed in on his heels and saw him take the only vacant chair, the one presided over by the best barber. It always happens so. I sat down, hoping that I might fall heir to the chair belonging to the better of the remaining 2 barbers, for he had already begun combing his man's hair, while his comrade was not yet quite done rubbing up and oiling his customer's locks. I watched the probabilities with strong interest. When I saw that number 2 was gaining on number 1, my interest grew to solicitude. When number 1 stopped a moment to make change on a Bath ticket for a newcomer and lost ground in the race, my solicitude rose to anxiety. When number 1 caught up again, and both he and his comrade were pulling the towels away and brushing the powder from their customers' cheeks, and it was about an even thing which one would say next first, my very breath stood still with the suspense. But when at the culminating moment, number 1 stopped to pass a comb a couple of times through his customer's eyebrows, I saw that he had lost the race by a single instant, and I rose indignant and quitted the shop to keep from falling into the hands of number 2, for I have none of that enviable firmness that enables a man to look calmly into the eyes of a waiting barber and tell him he will wait for his fellow barber's chair. I stayed out 15 minutes and then went back, hoping for better luck. Of course, all the chairs were occupied now, and 4 men sat waiting, silent, unsociable, distraught and looking bored, as men always do who are waiting their turn in a barber shop. I sat down in one of the iron-armed compartments of an old sofa and put in the time for a while, reading the framed advertisements of all sorts of quack nostrums for dyeing and coloring hair. Then I read the greasy names on the private bay rum bottles. read the names and noted the numbers on the private shaving cups in the pigeonholes, studied the stained and damaged cheap prints on the walls of battles, early presidents, and voluptuous recumbent sultanas, and the tiresome and everlasting young girl putting her grandfather's spectacles on. Execrated in my heart the cheerful canary and the distracting parrot that few barber shops are without. Finally, I searched out the least dilapidated of last year's illustrated papers that littered the foul center table and conned their unjustifiable misrepresentations of old forgotten events. At last, my turn came. A voice said, "Next," and I surrendered to number 2, of course. It always happens so. I said meekly that I was in a hurry, and it affected him as strongly as if he had never heard it. He shoved up my head and put a napkin under it. He plowed his fingers into my collar and fixed a towel there. He explored my hair with his claws and suggested that it needed trimming. I said I did not want it trimmed. He explored again and said it was pretty long for the present style. Better have a little taken off. It needed it behind especially. I said I had had it cut only a week before. He yearned over it reflectively a moment and then asked with a disparaging manner who cut it. I came back at him promptly with a "You did." I had him there. Then he fell to stirring up his lather and regarding himself in the glass, stopping now and then to get close and examine his chin critically or inspect a pimple. Then he lathered one side of my face thoroughly and was about to lather the other when a dogfight attracted his attention, and he ran to the window and stayed and saw it out, losing 2 shillings on the result in bets with the other barbers, a thing which gave me great satisfaction. He finished lathering and then began to rub in the suds with his hand. He now began to sharpen his razor on an old suspender and was delayed a good deal on account of a controversy about a cheap masquerade ball he had figured at the night before, in red cambric and bogus ermine as some kind of a king. He was so gratified with being chaffed about some damsel whom he had smitten with his charms that he used every means to continue the controversy by pretending to be annoyed at the chaffings of his fellows. This matter begot more surveyings of himself in the glass, and he put down his razor and brushed his hair with elaborate care, plastering an inverted arch of it down on his forehead, accomplishing an accurate part behind, and brushing the 2 wings forward over his ears with nice exactness. In the meantime, the lather was drying on my face and apparently eating into my vitals. Now he began to shave, digging his fingers into my countenance to stretch the skin and bundling and tumbling my head this way and that as convenience and shaving demanded. As long as he was on the tough sides of my face, I did not suffer, but when he began to rake and rip and tug at my chin, the tears came. He now made a handle of my nose to assist him shaving the corners of my upper lip, and it was by this bit of circumstantial evidence that I discovered that a part of his duties in the shop was to clean the kerosene lamps. I had often wondered in an indolent way whether the barbers did that or whether it was the boss. About this time, I was amusing myself, trying to guess where he would be most likely to cut me this time, but he got ahead of me and sliced me on the end of the chin before I got my mind made up. He immediately sharpened his razor. He might have done it before. I do not like a close shave and would not let him go over me a second time. I tried to get him to put up his razor, dreading that he would make for the side of my chin, my pet tender spot, a place which a razor cannot touch twice without making trouble. But he said he only wanted to just smooth off one little roughness, and in the same moment, he slipped his razor along the forbidden ground, and the dreaded pimple signs of a close shave rose up smarting and answered to the call. Now he soaked his towel in bay rum and slapped it all over my face nastily, slapped it over as if a human being ever yet washed his face in that way. Then he dried it by slapping with the dry part of the towel, as if a human being ever dried his face in such a fashion, but a barber seldom rubs you like a Christian. Next, he poked bay rum into the cut place with his towel, then choked the wound with powdered starch, then soaked it with bay rum again, and would have gone on soaking and powdering it forevermore, no doubt, if I had not rebelled and begged off. He powdered my whole face now, straightened me up, and began to plow my hair thoughtfully with his hands. Then he suggested a shampoo and said my hair needed it badly, very badly. I observed that I shampooed it myself very thoroughly in the bath yesterday. I had him again. He next recommended some of Smith's hair glorifier and offered to sell me a bottle. I declined. He praised the new perfume, Jones's Delight of the Toilet, and proposed to sell me some of that. I declined again. He tendered me a toothwash atrocity of his own invention, and when I declined, offered to trade knives with me. He returned to business after the miscarriage of this last enterprise, sprinkled me all over, legs and all, greased my hair in defiance of my protest against it, rubbed and scrubbed a good deal of it out by the roots, and combed and brushed the rest, parting it behind, and plastering the eternal inverted arch of hair down on my forehead. And then, while combing my scant eyebrows and defiling them with pomade, strung out an account of his achievements, of a 6-ounce black and tan terrier of his, till I heard the whistles blow for noon, and knew I was 5 minutes too late for the train. Then he snatched away the towel, brushed it lightly about my face, passed his comb through my eyebrows once more, and gaily sang out, "Next." This barber fell down and died of apoplexy 2 hours later. I am waiting over a day for my revenge. I am going to attend his funeral.